So with the new sequel just days away from release, hell by the time this video comes out it might already be out, I decided to take a look back on the classic film from 1988. Produced on a budget of around $15 million, it grossed just under $75 million, becoming an instant success, and even if you take into account inflation, meaning it had a $39 million budget, it still made just under $200 million, so it was a big hit. Directed by Tim Burton, coming off the success of his directorial debut, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, the film faced several problems, with the earlier drafts essentially removing most of the comedy and making it a far darker picture, with the titular character becoming far more murderous in his hijinks with the Deets. However, after selling the script to the Geffen Company, Warren made a rewrite more in line with what we have today, including developing the idea of the Matlins' limbo being their house in the sandworm world. And eventually, after some more rewrites, we got the film we know today. And is it still good? Let's find out. The film begins with the Matlins, a loving couple living in a nice house with a model of the town, in which a spider is on.
You promise to love me the rest of your life.
Yeah, pretty sure you killed it. Don't know how well spiders adapt to being thrown 50 feet into the ground they likely don't remember crawling into, but okay.
Side note, I pronounced Maitland wrong. It's Maitland, not Matlin. I don't know where I got that from, but yeah, also at the end they don't perform a seance. Well, they try to, but it's an exorcism. So, yeah, my bad.
Either way, this is Adam and his wife Barbara, who are spending their vacation at their house. Not something you hear too often. But I do have to say this film does a very good job setting up the couple as loving in a very short time. Yeah, maybe seeing this couple go back and forth kissing each other makes me feel somehow even more single, but yeah, whatever. It's still good. They ward off Jane, as well, who is attempting to sell their house to a couple that actually has a family. Rude comment aside, this is a nice setup for when they later meet Lydia and sort of become parents to her as well, or surrogate parents. It's a nice reincorporation. They go driving and get some materials, but on the way back, narrowly avoid a dog and end up with their lives in his paws, and they're dead. Wow, what an asshole. And even checks to make sure the job is done. However, I do enjoy how quickly it all happens. It's realistic for how a real-life crash would go and make us feel as disoriented as they are, especially once they get back to the house and try warming up as Barbara is freezing, which is somewhat brought over from an earlier draft that had more of like an explicit death for the couple, with Barbara's arm being crushed, so either way, it gets some damage inflicted to it, so there's that. But the whole scene is just really good and feels very disoriented, which makes sense because they just died, basically. They eventually realize they don't have reflections, and whenever they go outside, they're in a completely different world. They then find a handbook for the recently deceased.
Handbook for the recently deceased.
No, deceased. The next day, they tried reading through the book, but it reads like stereo instructions, so they're not going to get very far. Good thing some people come in to liven the place up. Turns out the place has been sold to the Deets. Delia and Charles, along with Lydia, who's from Charles' first marriage, who's a photographer. Delia is a sculptor who produces interesting things. Kinda looks like a walnut on wheels, but at least Charles is enjoying the move. Otho breaks into the movie, quite literally, stealing the show as one of the best characters. Rest in peace, Glenn Shaddix. You did a great job with this character, as you did with the mayor in The Nightmare Before Christmas.
I think.
Oh, she freaky. She and Otho go through the house, and I have to admire just how quickly the Matlins are to terrorize the others, especially how little Otho cares except for the marketability. He's got his priorities in order. His lack of care might stem from the fact that they can't see the Matlins at all, but they sure as hell can feel the effects, such as not being able to open the attic door. Doesn't matter, they leave anyways. Eventually, both Adam and Barbara land in the sand world and meet one of the sandworms, one of my favorite inclusions in the film. The stop motion adds to it and just makes it look really cool and creative. During dinner time, the Deets all have a discussion, wherein Charles seems to be the only one having a good time. To be honest, I like his character. Sure, he's not the greatest, especially the actor, because some not great stuff happened, but he does seem to care about his family to an extent and have empathy for the Matlins later, so that's pretty good. During the Deets' renovation of the house, Barbara and Adam read about Beetlejuice, pronounced Beetlejuice, like the star. Lydia starts taking pictures but notices Barb and Adam and tries opening the attic, but they stop her, for now. During this, they see a commercial for Beetlejuice posing as a cowboy, emphasis on the cow part. Hell, he really wants them to call him, even offering to get pegged. But hold your breath, he takes a little while to come to the story. They end up drawing a door into the afterlife and finding out they're not exactly as prepared as they should be.
How do I look? There's no mirrors on this side.
Fine, look fine.
Yeah?
Fine.
Thanks, I've been feeling a little flat.
They walk through until they find their caseworker, Juno, who basically tells them they're on their own, they have 125 years to live in the house, and they have to scare out the Deetses without anyone else's help, especially Beetlejuice's. Side note, I like the detail of the smoke coming out of Juno's slit throat, but it's weird that she tells him how to contact Beetlejuice despite not liking him, but I guess her reasoning about not wanting them to come upon this information without her help is solid enough. Heck, we even learn a little bit about him, who's one of her assistants, got into trouble, and eventually went on to be his own freelance bioexorcist. However, it seems he's already here, as in the town model he eats a fly for some sustenance that weirdly has a voice. I mean, I like it, it's funny, it's just he didn't talk until right before he was about to die. During a phone call, Charles attempts to convince his boss, Maxie, or Max for short, to come down to the town and see what it's all about. During this, Barb and Adam attempt to scare the others, but just end up making fools of themselves until Lydia notices them. She takes some photos proving that they're ghosts, and basically she says that she can see the ghosts because most other people ignore strange and unusual stuff, and she is strange and unusual. But she was also able to read the book for the newly deceased, so is the book also able to be read and seen by anyone unusual, and considering Lydia and Otho, who's into the paranormal and was a paranormal researcher for a bit, could actually see and interact with it, or is the thing just anyone can look at? Anyways, the couple explains to Lydia their plan and sort of kickstarts their parental relationship and how they quickly accept her, not treating her as an outcast but rather one of them. She tries telling her mother, but she doesn't care, revealing the fact that her biggest fear is being embarrassed. Inspiration, anyone? While looking at the model town, Barb and Adam are transported to it after saying Beetlejuice's name 3 times. They start to dig up his grave, but find out he's a little bit more proactive than other ghosts. I mean, in the musical he says he's a demon, but that's likely hyperbole. In fact, something of note I didn't realize until some people pointed out is that there is a deleted scene that revealed Beetlejuice died because he hung himself over the fact that he got rejected by a girl, which makes sense considering the other people that worked for Juno had self-inflicted wounds. I am surprised how long it took for Beetlejuice to appear, but I do like how he's so different to Barbara, who I just call Barb sometimes, it kind of shifts between, I don't know why, and Adam. Makes for a fun dynamic. Oh, that too. However, his attitude scares them off, but honestly, I don't blame them. Dude's a pervert, which would be worse in the original script, where instead of trying to marry Lydia, he just wants to have sex with her. So, yeah, not great. Glad they got rid of that.
Nice fucking model!
What? They could say that? I thought this was PG. Oh, yeah. That tracks. Later that night, the Deets, along with Otho and some others, have dinner until it's interrupted by the Matlins making them sing Deo, which works, just not in the way they intended. Like, it works within the film, just not within the way the Matlins intended. Like, it gets them all up in a jazz and ready to stay. So, yeah, guys, maybe, read the manual. You guys really don't know what you're doing. You're supposed to scare them out, not make them want to stay and commercialize all this. Amazing scene either way, and a great song, especially with how committed Catherine O'Hara is to the bit. Anyways, Otho and the others discuss the business potential of a haunted house, with the Matlins realizing they need to take more severe measures. Severe as in getting Beetlejuice to become a snake in a scene that perfectly toes the line between scary and silly. The way he moves is just so unnerving, but he still manages to be silly with that voice. It really works. However, the Matlins disapprove of his behavior and get him out of there. But Lydia leaves, feeling alone. They meet back up with Juno, who's dealing with some football players who died. Fun fact, although it's not really fun, they're loosely based off a football team who sadly perished in 1970, but it's only loosely as the coaches didn't survive unlike the movie, and their outfits are different than in this movie. So it's kind of loosely based off of it, barely, I guess, so not really a fun fact, but I guess something I wanted to bring up. Anyways, while Lydia's writing a final letter, the Matlins prepare their final move, which is, pretty damn creepy. Otho, having picked up the handbook for the recently deceased, gathers Maxie and some others to perform a seance, ruining their attempts to scare the Deets off and aging them, slowly killing them. Lydia realizes this, and while Charles does and feels bad about it like I said earlier, he doesn't do much. Lydia then finds Beetlejuice, who seemingly can't say his own name so he has to, through a game of charades. Well, not really since he shows the things, but I digress. He eventually comes out and kinda saves the Matlins, but also messes with the Deets and forces Lydia into marriage. That is, until she's saved by the Matlins, who neither of which say his name 3 times, but all together say it 3 times. So, does it not matter if it's one person saying it? Because I know he can't say it, he has to force the person to say it to give him some control. He is a tricky fellow after all. But does it not matter if, at least if they're trying to get him back into the town, do they not have to necessarily say it 3 times in a row from one person? Can't it just be a couple people say it all together? If so, that seems weird. Either way, the day is saved, and everything is back to normal. Hell, the Deets are actually good parents now, and Lydia performs air dances after getting an A on her math quiz. The film ends with Beetlejuice trying to make an appointment and tricking himself to be next. And that was Beetlejuice. Pretty good. I'm gonna be honest, going into this I wasn't sure how to set my expectations. I like some of Tim Burton's stuff, like Frankenweenie and Nightmare Before Christmas, but I wasn't sure going into this. I heard a lot of mixed things, and, well, I really liked it. The characters were all pretty good and likable, especially the Matlins becoming the heart of the film, along with Lydia, but that doesn't also mean Charles and Delia aren't great too, because they are. They managed to come across as neglectful, but not complete pieces of trash, so their switch to becoming better parents is a little less shaky. And hell, Beetlejuice, despite his limited screen time, is great.
I don't know what her problem is. Normally chicks
He manages to be threatening but also hilarious and helps add to this film's wackiness that makes me eager to revisit it and its world. Some of his logic doesn't hold up, and maybe the film could have developed the relationship between Lydia and the Matlins better, but overall it's a fun time that has a good amount of heart to ground the silliness. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, check out some of my others. You might like them as I cover a wide range of movies, both well-known and not. You can follow me on Instagram and or TikTok and see what I post, which is occasionally on Instagram, but I post about movies I've seen on TikTok and make reviews of them. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.